In this video, we are going to design a beautiful scratch card which you have already seen in the Google Pay. In order to get rewards, you see the scratch cards. That's what we are going to design today. Let's get started. If you're a beginner with Ionic, then you must know how to install the Ionic CLI. This is the command. And to create a new project, this is the command that you need to run. After running that, you need to simply run the last command for executing it in browser or running your application in browser, that is Ionic serve. If you do that up, that is what I have done. You will see the design in this particular way. This is a blank project which I have created here. Now we are going to design that for having our scratch card list, for which I'll go to the home page. Let me close it. Let's go to our home page HTML file, and I'm going to clean up all the content which is provided here by default to us. There you go. Everything is removed. I'm going to name it as rewards. That's what we are going to get. We are now going to start our design with the ion content, where at first I'm going to give a color, background color of light. There you go, it is working. And then I'm going to have all the things within an ion row, where I'm going to have some ion column too, with proper sizes. For large screen, I want the size to be 4, and for other screens, I want the size to be 6. For small, I want 6, and finally for extra large, I want 4 once again. Finally, you can give it for extra small also to have value 6. That's how I'm going to design. Within the ion column, I'm going to have an ion card here, where I'm going to pass all my data, and I'm going to pass a class to it called scratch card if I need to work with it in the CSS. Now within this, we have another tag called ion card content, where I'm going to pass an image tag where src will be assets/imgs/one. These images are already available in my assets folder. If I show you here, in the imgs folder, I already have 3 icons. One is won, loss, and a coupon. This is what we are going to implement in our HTML. As of now, I am just passing won. Why is it not showing? Now you see the icon here. After that, you can pass an alternative called gift if you want to. This is just optional. If you want to pass it, then you can simply try it, which I think you should actually pass. Now the next part is to have an h5 tag, where I'm going to write you have won, and then in the p tag, well, let me clear out the spelling here. I'm going to pass rupee symbol. You can get it from the internet. Just search rupee symbol and you will find it out. If you want to pass dollar, definitely you can try it out. It's pretty simple, right? Then price, let me give, let's say 1000. It's done. And I can align all the things at the center by giving ion text center, and it's working, right? So our card is ready. After having all the content, we just need to design it up to make sure that whatever we have seen in the intro video, we will get the same design. And in order to do that, I'm going to move to the SCSS file of the home page and work with the ion card here. In the ion card, we have the img tag, in which I'm going to apply some CSS, like the height and width. I'm going to fix it to 5 rem with an object fit of cover. Along with that, I'm giving some margin on top and bottom, and left and right 0. If you want some margin on the left and right, definitely you can try it out. I'm also passing a background to be transparent, along with a border radius of 10 pixels. This won't reflect in this image because it is white color mostly, but it will reflect on the other image that we are going to have. That is why I'm just passing it, formatting the document. It's looking good. Now the image is done. The next thing which I'm going to work with is the p tag, where I'll give font size of 1.2 rem, along with that the font weight to be bold, and a margin of 5 pixels. So this is fine, the p tag, but our h5 tag is not looking that great because it is looking too small. Let me go for h4 tag. That might be better. Actually, it's not changing. What about h2? Yeah, it's actually applied. Let's go for h4 once again. I think it's going to be fine. How about h3? Well, I think h2 is okay. With h2, we are getting a proper design. So we can keep that. Or if you want to design it, then you can go to SCSS and design it on your own with a proper font size that you want to give. Now, apart from that, I want to give a bouncing effect to the award that I get. In order to achieve that, well, I'll give it an optional one, because we are going to have some of the cards which will not have any reward actually. So in that case, that's not going to bounce, the image will not bounce. So in order to make that optional, we are going to use ng class. But before going to that part, let's first work with the SCSS. For the bouncing effect, let me pass the keyframes for bounce. This is going to be my keyframes. After that, I will pass a class called bounce animation, or you can give any class name you want, where I'm going to pass an animation of bounce for 2 seconds infinitely. And I'm going to apply this class conditionally in my HTML, but for applying the condition, I need to have a lot of items actually. For that, I need a list. In order to have a list, I'll go to the TS file and prepare a list, which will be called, let me call it gifts, or you can call it rewards too. Rewards of type any array equals to an empty array initially. I'm going to initialize it in the ng on init lifecycle hook because I'm going to shuffle it. So I'm going to create a constant called with the same name, rewards, any name you can give. That's going to be an array with lots of objects. Now in the object, I'm just passing the price and ID. You can shuffle it, or you can create a function to generate the price dynamically or in fact randomly, but I'm just fixing it up to have a proper thing. Because I want to do something when the price is 0. If price is 0, that means you won't get any award. If you don't get any award, I want to show something differently. That is why I have kept like 5 price 0 and 5 some greater than 0 price. Once that is done, what am I going to do? I'll create a function at first for shuffling my gifts or rewards. You can make it rewards. That would look better. Everywhere you can change it to rewards. Fine. After doing that, I'll simply call here this dot rewards will be initialized to this dot shuffle rewards, in which I will simply pass the constant that we created earlier for the rewards, right? Now in this rewards function, shuffle rewards function, I'm getting the array and it's going to actually return an array, okay, of type any, where I'm looping it up starting from the length of the rewards -1 till it is greater than 0. And this is how the randomly defined value will be allotted to the rewards. Now after applying this functionality, you can pass a console log if you want to, but I'll go directly to the HTML. Use the @4. We don't need to use ng4. We can use @4, or if you want to use ng4, definitely you can within a standalone project or in an ng modules project. But if you want to use it for a standalone project, you have to go to TS file, and in the imports, you have to pass ng4 and import it from @angular/common. Since I'm not going to do that. I'll go to the HTML and use it up, for which I don't need to do anything. Let me call reward of rewards track. This is important. If you don't pass track, it's not going to allow you to go ahead. It's going to give you errors. After doing that, I'm going to move my ion column within this for loop in this particular way. Look at this. It's working. It's giving us many rewards, which are of proper sizes. So I'm liking it. If you want to reduce the spacing, definitely you can work on that. Like here, I can check how much spacing is being allowed here. Look at this. This is ion card content having some spaces, and this is the ion card having lots of margin, I think, right? So there is a lot of margin that is being applied. If you want to reduce it, definitely you can work with it. For the time being, let me keep that part and move ahead to design it up as per our requirement. So what I need is this image. I want it to bounce. I'm going to use here ng class. We have created a class, right? Now within this, we need to give this braces and pass the class name bounce animation, which will occur or which will be applied only on a certain condition if you want to. So the condition that I want is reward (dot price). I'm giving question mark because I am checking that if this value is available or not, since I'm not using any interface here. If it is greater than 0, then only I want to bounce it. Now I'm getting an error here. In order to resolve the error, what I need to do is I need to go to the TS file and import my ng class. If I do that up in the standalone project only, if I do that up, you will see it's going to bounce. But not all of them are bouncing. Why? Because this will have a different image which I have not passed yet. So let me give the conditions everywhere. I'm going to copy this condition, and in the image I'm going to pass this condition. If this is the case, then I'm going to show the one. Otherwise, the loss image I'm going to show. Actually, there is nothing called loss image. I've just named it as loss.png. Now you will see that up here. We don't have the price to be greater than 0. It will be equals to 0. So in this case, I want to show something differently, which I'm going to put within a condition. So at if, this is another decorator which I can use, reward (price). If it is greater than 0, then I want to show this condition. But here also I want some dynamic data, like this price should come dynamically from the value that we get within the rewards object, each object actually, reward object. And we have an else condition also where I'm going to pass. Okay, now it's looking better. You can increase it if you want to. Like for the iron row that we have at the top, we can give some margin to that. Iron row, let me give some margin, 10 pixels on the top and bottom and 5 pixels on left and right. If I do that up, I think it's going to be fine. Towards the iron card, whatever I have given the margin, if I remove it, it's not working properly. So with this design, it is looking much better and having appropriate spaces. If you want to increase it, definitely you can try with 10 pixel margin. Well, it's not looking that great, but you can center everything if you want to. Now, instead of passing the width of 12 rem because it was not designed properly as it was moving towards left or right, so I've given width to be 100% and margin of 0. Doing that works great, but I want some margin towards the top and bottom, so I can just pass 5 pixel on the top and bottom and 0 on left and right, because on the left and right it's creating a problem, not at the top and bottom. Now we have proper designs, right? Great. Once that is done, what we need to do next is we need to work with the other designs. Like what I'll do is at first for this h2 tag. Now the better luck next time that we have here is not looking great. I want to center it up. In order to do that, let me pass a class to it and let me call it next time or fail. Let me call the class fail, which I'm going to call here because we have h2 tag in two places, right? So it's going to be confusing. That is why I'm doing that. In the fail, what am I going to pass? Margin top of, let's say 5 pixel will be enough. By default, it has 2 pixels, hopefully. Let's go for 10 pixels. Would be great. I think that would be better, right? Yes. So the basic design is ready, right? We just need to play around now with a layer that will be on top of it, which we can scratch. For doing that, we need to do a lot of things into our HTML part. But before jumping to that, let me try something more. I'll try to tilt it and see how the design will look like. How is the responsiveness? If I go for a bigger device, or in fact in the responsive view. If I go for responsiveness, let's see what do I get. Now in this responsiveness, if I try to look at this, if I try to stretch, it's taking sizes on its own, like 3, or I've not given for 4, but at least 3 items you can have maximum based on the sizes. So responsiveness is working pretty nicely for us. It's time to check it on our devices once again. All right. To hide our design, I'm going to use a canvas. But before that, to my iron toolbar, let me give a color of primary that would look nice. Apart from that, where I need to work with the canvas, let's check it out. So within the iron card, I'm going to pass a canvas which will be used for scratchable overlay. And I'm going to give a width of 192 and a height of 192. Why am I doing that? Because I'm going to specify the sizes of it to be 12 rem. That's what I've given the height, and width is almost the same. So I'm just going to pass the same thing. Okay. Now you can see there is an overlay on top of it that we don't see the actual design within that. All right. Once that is done, the game is still not over. We need to design it in that way that it can be scratchable. That's the challenging part. First of all, I'm going to align my canvas properly. In order to do that, let me go to the SCSS and I'll work within the iron card. So let me just scroll down And here I'm going to pass the canvas with a position of absolute, top left 0 and index z index of 2 with a width and height of 12 rem. I can give width to be 100%. Let's check it out now. Or if you don't want to pass that, give 12 rem because we are passing the same in pixels into our HTML, like 192 pixel, 192. That's what the value is in pixels. The next thing which I'm going to work with is my ion card content. So within the ion card content, what I actually need to do is, let me work on that ion card content, where I'm going to pass position to be absolute and all the designing like top and left 0, height and width of 100%, display flags direction is column, and align item center, everything will be centered up. After that, z index I've given 1 and font family I've given Arial. So after giving the font family, look at this, this is applied everywhere within the ion card content, and the color of the text I've given it as black. Now it is looking much better actually. So for the ion card, I have to give absolute because for the canvas to be implemented, we need to do it in this particular way. We are going to now move to the TS file to work with the logic part. For doing that, in the home page class, what am I going to do? I'm going to create a view child which is going to be holding our canvas, the scratchable overlay canvas which is of type query list, which will hold each element, and then a view child. So why this view children is used here? Because it is used to get reference to multiple elements. In this case, it is the scratch overlay canvas. That's what we have passed in our HTML. This is the one. So it is going to redirect here every time because it's a loop. That is why it's view children, and view child basically refers to only one element. In our case, this is going to be our ion content here. Now for the element ref, I need to import it and we are good to go. All the imports are done. Now why we are using this view child on the ion content? Basically we are using it to control our scrollability of the ion content, as when we try to scratch it later on, it's going to scroll. So we don't want the scrolling part to be done. That is why it's going to be implemented. I'm going to show you that part, don't need to worry. Let's get ahead. The next thing that I want to initialize is a variable called CTX, which is of type canvas rendering context, and it is used to hold the array of canvas rendering context, which will be one for each canvas element. So that's what it's going to hold. Now I'm going to call another lifecycle which will be named, actually it's already named, means we are just using it up, ng after view init. Ng on init means on initialization it is called, and after init means after initialization. That's what the difference is between the two. Now after the view is init, I'm going to call my scratchable overlay for looping it up with some values. First of all, within this loop, I'm going to call each and every canvas element within a constant called canvas. So I'm going to call this canvas ref dot native element to call each and every canvas element that we are rendering. Now to set up the context within that, I'm going to use canvas.get context in 2D and then push it within the array. Now after doing that, you can pass some color to your background. So let me just pass this fill color silver. Well, actually it's not visible yet. Let me just do one thing in order to show you the design. I'll go to the SCSS and whatever I've done for the ion card content, let me just comment it for the time being. Alright, if I comment the canvas and the ion card content, I'll be able to see this part. Now after passing the fill color, you can simply fill your content and your content will show up for the canvas. Now let me just try to go for the SCSS and uncomment this styling and see whether it get implemented or not. Well, there you go. You can see it is implemented, but it is not of proper size. As you can see here, there is some spacing, right? Now to fix this problem, I need to pass the same width to my ion card. If I do that up, let me comment it. Well, the design will break little bit if I go for a bigger width. So I think I should wrap this ion card within something. Let me just go for it. Let me go for a div which I'm going to create as a wrapper here. So div which will have a class called scratch card wrapper. That's what the class name I'm going to give, and pass all my ion card data within this div here. Now let's work on it in our SCSS. What I'll do, I'm going to work with this class where I'm going to pass display to be flex and content will be centered up properly. If I try to change it now, let's see what happens. Just look at this. It is properly centered up. It is not stretching it anywhere else. Means it's not just moving towards the right side. That's what the benefit it is giving us if we use a div and within that the ion card. Now you can get rid of the overflow also. We will not have any design to be overflown, so you can just remove it if you want to, or you can keep it also. So up till here, everything is fine. What you can do next is, I'll go to the TS file once again. Instead of passing the color, well, you can play with any color if you want to. What I'll do is, I can actually pass some gradient color also. To pass a gradient color, let me just show you the design. This is what you need to do in order to pass a gradient color. Any color you can pass. This is what I have given. Okay, play around with it. But actually, I'm not going to pass the gradient color also in my design. I'm going to work with an image here. I've shown you the basic color, the gradient color, now the image part. To create an image, I'm going to use a constant called image, any name you can give, where I'll hold the image object and within which I'll just pass the image that we have into our assets folder. So after doing that, I just need to load everything within that particular image. So at first I'm going to call a callback on my image load. When the image is loaded, what am I going to do? That's what I'm going to pass here within this. So when the image loads, I will draw an image actually on this width and height. But actually this won't be required. Okay, now the error is gone and we see the image wrapped up on top of our ion card. Not the ion card, the ion card content. So this is done. Now we need some listeners here. So basically what will happen, let me implement the scratching part, then I'm going to show you how to work with listeners also. Now within this onload, I will pass some listeners. What are those listeners will be? Basically when you move your cursor, it's going to scratch, right? So before jumping into the code part, let me just explain you. This will be the code. If you're working with the colors directly, you don't need to pass on onload. You just need to pass it outside of the onload. There won't be any onload. This is just for image part, where actually what we are doing, if you touch move, mouse move. If you're moving, that means you are going for scratching part. That's what it's going to be handled by this particular function called scratch, handle scratch, which I'm going to just create it. After this, let me create handle scratch function. This function will accept two arguments or parameters. One is the event, that is the touch event or the mouse event, and the other one is the index. That's what it is going to get. Now within this, at first I'm going to get that particular canvas which it is trying to access or scratch. For doing that, I can directly access the CTX array and I'm going to get the context out of it. After doing that, I will also get the actual native element within a constant called canvas and work with a function called get bounding client rect. Now this function is used to get the size and the position of the part in which you are trying to scratch in the viewport. It's going to return the DOM rect. So in precise, you need to understand it's going to give you the position where you are trying to scratch. That's it. After doing that, we can check the value in X direction and Y direction, how much it is. So in offset X, I have created a constant. Now the offset X and offset Y are used to hold the position of the user where exactly it is trying to scratch in X direction and Y direction. That's how it's going to give us the exact position. Then we can remove those parts. Whatever is available behind that will be visible. So in order to make it visible, we need to remove some scratch part from there, right? In order to do that, I'm going to call destination out in my global position operation and call the begin path function, which begins a new path on the canvas. And what is a path? It's a series of lines, curves, shapes, anything that you can draw or fill. And in this case, it's going to use to erase that particular part where we are drawing something. Now, in order to remove that, an arc will be drawn with the help of the arc function, which will be drawn in a clockwise direction. And then the fill function is being used, which is used for filling the circle. But in this case, since we have given destination out, so it's going to erase that part. So if you use all this functionality, it's going to start erasing the stuff and we will see the actual data that we need to. So how interesting it is to work with this part, isn't it? If I try to achieve it, let's see. Okay, you can see I'm trying to scratch and it is showing some part, but actually it is scrolling also, which I don't want. Now, in order to stop this scrolling part, I need to work with the ion content. That is why we have used the view child. In order to do that, I'll again go back to the image onload because that's what we are implementing. And here I need to work with some other listeners too. So in total, there will be a lot of listeners. Let me just pass it directly. I'm going to have here touch start, mouse down, touch move, and the mouse move, touch end, mouse up. All these listeners will be available, and if you have touch move or mouse move, then only we are going to scratch. Otherwise, if there is a touch start and mouse down, then we are going to disable the scrolling because at that point of time you are going for the scratching part. But if you're going for touch end, means you're about to leave, or you have gone for mouse up, then definitely you are going for scrolling. At that point of time, we are going to enable the scrolling. This will be the functions that I'm just going to create. Let me just do it after this. To enable and disable scroll, it's very simple. This dot ion content dot scroll y will be true and false. That's it. That's what you need to do for enabling and disabling. You can do it in a single function also just by passing the value, but actually in this case it's fine to work with this part. I'm binding this with that particular element in which it is being triggered, because we are drawing a proper canvas in a loop, right, for each and every item, and that's where in each and every item this particular things will be called. Now after implementing that, let's try to check it out. If I go for scratching it, now you see there is no movement, isn't it? But if I turn it off and if I try to scroll this time, what's happening? Yeah, I'm able to scroll. So actually it's working, right? From the sideways, just try to scroll it. Now we need to pass some value to it, like how it's going to be calculated that everything is removed, right? Say like if you have scratched 50%, everything will be removed. So that's what we are going to implement right now. For doing that, I'll go to the scratch, handle scratch part. Let me call a function here called calculate scratched percentage. That's what I'm going to do. And this function, it's going to do what? Let's create it and then check it out. Let me remove this part. Now the index that we get here, it will be of type number. And within this function, let me implement some code here. So at first I'm getting the context and the canvas from that particular index, because we already hold the array of the rendered context of the canvas within the CTXS. So I already have the index, so I can get the value out of it, right? That's what I'm doing. Now after that, the get image data function is getting called, which will represent the pixel data for a specific area of the canvas. In this case, it is going to get the pixel data of the entire canvas starting from top left corner to bottom right corner. Now here this calculation is being done, and what is the total pixels? This is the total pixel which is having image data.data.length divided by 4. Why 4? Because each pixel in the image data is represented by 4 values, that is RGBA, red, green, blue and alpha. Now if the alpha value is 0, it means the pixel is fully transparent. And by checking this particular condition, it is saying that now this is the ith pixel which is being checked here. Okay, this is just to check if the alpha value is 0, then the clear pixel will be incremented by 1. This is just to keep track how many pixels have been scratched off. Now after this, let me call this dot rewards at that particular index dot scratch percentage. I'm going to set it to clear pixels divided by total pixels. So total pixels, the number of pixels that we have on that particular canvas, multiplied by 100 will give us the percentage. So I'm just adding another property to it. Now after this function will be executed, I'll get the percentage and I can check it out. If the percentage is greater than 50, then I can simply scratch up everything. Means it will be transparent then. Let's work on that. I'll give a condition if this dot rewards at that particular index dot scratched, the percentage that we've given here, right? In this particular property that we have set in this function, I'm going to check that value. If it is greater than 50, then I'll call another function which will reveal our context. So reveal the content where this index is present. Let me clear this spelling. Now it's fine. So let's work with the reveal content now, which will have index of type number. So it's pretty simple what we are going to execute here. You will understand it pretty nicely. So at first we are getting the native element which is redirecting to that particular canvas in which we are actually scratching. Once we get that, I'm going to give a transition to it to ease out slowly and steadily, because if you go for a quick transition, it's not going to look nice. That is why ease out is being given there. And then finally I'm giving the opacity of 0, so no design will be applied there. After doing that, the display of the canvas, I'm just going to set it to none so that there won't be any canvas once it is scratched off. That's what we have done. So all the functionality is ready. It's time to try it. Let me just scratch it and it's gone. We get the design. What about this particular one? We get it. Then there you go. You can see the scratch part is executed properly into our application. And let's check it out for responsiveness. I'll just enlarge it and tilt it. If I tilt it, you can work on the design part a bit more if you're tilting it up. Let me just reload it. And I think we can have some more stuff within this if you want to. For doing that, well, we can work on the HTML part. And what about the medium? I can go for 4 and small is fine, extra large is fine. Let's look at now. We have 3 items, but what if I get back? How many items do I have? I have 2. Now it's fine, right? So for the medium, I have changed it. It's looking better, right? Now if I scratch it, it's working. There is no scrolling effect now, isn't it? Which is great. And if I don't scratch for 50%, it's not going to get away. Now let's try to scratch it and see whether the scrollable is working or not. So see, we are scratching it up, but the scrollable is not creating any problem. Means the ion content scrollable is working fine. And when the scratching is finished, we can still scroll it properly, right? There you go. And if I tilt it, means rotate it, still I can go for the scrollable part. Okay. But if you face some trouble with the tilting part, then you can work on that with the help of screen orientation that we have within the capacitor.js. So if I go to capacitorjs.com, I'll go to the plugins. Let me enlarge it and show you up. There is a plugin section where you will find screen orientation. So we can install this particular plugin and work around with it. I'll open up another terminal and paste it. So meanwhile, it is being done. For the iOS, you need to pass this in the appdelegate.swift file, and for locking the orientation, you need to pass it in your info.playlist. But I don't want to lock it. So what we actually need to do is, I just need to trigger the orientation. Whenever there is an orientation change, I want to enable the scrolling part. That's what I want to do. That's it. And I think it's done, right? Once it is done, I just need to use it into my application. I won't be showing you for Android and iOS because it's going to be implemented. I have already tested it. That is why you just need to play around with the things that is being told here. Just pass all these things and you're good to go. For locking you, if you don't want, don't pass this. I'm going to go to my TS file, homepage TS file, and work around with the orientation part now. In order to do that, so I'm going to apply the functionality in ng after viewing it. Make sure you apply this functionality only if you face a problem with the tilting or with the rotation. Okay, if you're not able to scroll properly, let me just pass it after this particular one. What I'll do is I'll create a function called this dot check orientation. That's what I'm going to create. Check orientation. Within this, I will first pass a listener in which I'm going to check for screen orientation change. If there is any change, let me import everything at first. This is imported. This one not getting the option, but I'm going to copy it and pass it directly here in this way. Once I do that up, the error will go away and I can use it up. Now, if orientation change is available, then I will simply go for this dot enable scroll. Okay, I'll do the same here too. Enable scroll. That's it. And I'm going to call this function, which I've already done, so I don't need to worry about it. What's wrong? Well, there is an error because I'm using await. I need to pass async here. The error will go away. Now I can use it. Let me reload it and we get the stuff. Okay. In the browser, you need to work with another thing like mouse movement. It's being applied. So you can just remove the mouse movement if you want to. You can keep it only for the main devices like the Android and iOS devices. Let me try it here and close it. So this is working. If I go for tilt by enlarging it, let's try it, and it's working. However, I tilt it once again if I'm trying to do something and go for it. I'm able to scroll. Once again, I'm able to scroll. So there is no issue. There was no issue earlier also, but you might face some issue. That's not mandatory. But if you face some issue, we have a solution for that too. And with the help of this shuffle function, every time you try to open it up, it's going to give you a different design. Means this is going to be shuffle the data. So you never know where you're going to get what, right? Like the way I'm doing it here, and the design is looking superb, right? Now we have implemented everything which is needed for our scratch card to work. The last thing which is related to a memory leak problem that might occur potentially, we have to stop that. How we can stop that? Well, actually we are using listeners into our application. Where is the listeners? This is the listener that we are using into our application. Along with that, we are also working with the check orientation listener too. I need to remove all these listeners when the page is destroyed. That can be triggered in ng on destroy. Well, I have already written the code. I just want to explain you step by step so that you can easily execute it. Now let's get back to the top where I have to do what? I'll create a variable called listeners, which will be initialized to an empty array, which will be of type a callback array that's going to return void. Why am I doing that? I'm going to explain you in some time. But what have I done? If I need to remove this listeners that is created here, because these are being passed in a variable called canvas, right? And I cannot call this particular variable directly into my ng on destroy and remove the listeners. So what can I do? In order to remove it, I have to pass all these things within a variable called listeners or any other name you can pass. Let me uncomment it, because if that is stored in a proper location, then I can remove all of them at once. That is why I'm doing so. And I will be taking the help of this renderer too in order to execute some of the tasks. This is already imported from @angular/core. You can see that, right? So you need to import it, and after importing, you can use it. How you are going to use it, I'm going to show you just now. First of all, the listeners that I was using earlier, I'm going to comment all of it and replace it with this kind of a listener function, add listener function, which is just created here, within which, what am I doing? I am accepting few arguments. The first one will be the element, the HTML element, that will be our canvas in this case. Then we will have the event name. That is what we are having everywhere. And finally the callback that will be passed. Alright, so in that scenario, everything remains the same. The things that we have done here remains the same. All the things that is being done here, we are already passing in this particular function. Now in this function, I've made it as private because I won't be using it anywhere else apart from this class. Now I'm creating a constant called listener, which will be initialized to a value where we are calling the renderer that we have injected into our constructor. We can use the inject function also instead of passing it directly in the constructor, but I have done that. You can try either way. Now within this renderer, there is a function called listen, which will implement the callback to start an event listener. That is why this listen function will be used, and where this callback will be executed for that particular event in that HTML element. Alright, and finally we are going to push that into our variable called listeners one by one. Now in that way, all the things that we have put in here, all the listeners will be put on within this function one by one, and this variable will have all the data in an array. Now what next we need to do? We need to just create a function called ng on destroy, that is actually a lifecycle hook that will be called when the page is destroyed. In that, I can directly call this variable and run a loop in that and unlisten all the functionality. So this is what I can do. And for the screen orientation, there is already a function called remove all listeners. If you call that up, it's going to remove all the listeners that are applied on the screen orientation. That's the thing you need to do, and the problem will be resolved for any kind of a memory leak that can happen. Now we are done with this scratch card design. So we have successfully implemented the scratch card design into our Ionic application. This is how we do it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button and share the content with your friends. Stay tuned to the channel for more such content. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.